beautiful humans. Welcome to another episode of Role Models, Juicy Conversations with Beautiful Humans. I'm Jennifer Norman, founder of the Human Beauty Movement and your host. This podcast thrives on your support. So if you like what you hear, follow us, rate us, review us, share this episode with everyone you know across your networks. So I have a question for everyone who's listening. Do you consider yourself a great leader, a great team player, both, or none of the above? Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to rise to the occasion and make your presence bigger in your organization and in your life. My guest is Chris Hutchinson. Chris is the founder of Trebuchet Group, a certified B corporation that helps bring out the best in organizations and people. Now, Chris calls himself an abundance influencer. He helps coach and mentor people on building effective leadership skills and great teams. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's wonderful to be with you.
I am delighted to have this conversation. It is so important because I would say it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. You could be a young student. You could be the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I think that there's one thing that all of us humans have in common, and that is the frustration or the fear of not living up to our potential. Would you say that you would agree?
I absolutely do. I think that's something, whether it's on the surface or deep within, that a lot of people are trying to figure out how to be enough and how to be with others and be enough.
Yeah. Now, I want to wind it back to 2002 when you started the Trebuchet Group. What was it that caused you to think, I think there's an opportunity to help people with leadership and with organizations?
Well, that's such a great question. And I'm going to actually wind it back a little bit further. So when I was graduating from college and I was a brand new, wet behind the ears mechanical engineer and a lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force, I went through ROTC to pay for my degree. I was on a team where there was the leader. Well, it was really challenging. I would just tell you the environment on the team was keep your head down, hide in the grass, don't put yourself out there because you're going to get criticized. And if you bring any bad news, heaven forbid, things were going to be bad. And I was thinking my 4-year commitment was like a 4-year sentence. I'm in trouble. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And luckily, things change in big organizations. They have rotate people through, and I got put on a different team essentially. And this team was, hey, I'm really strong at this. You don't seem like you've got that. Let me help you. And I noticed that you have a superpower here. How can we harness that? Lots of communication, lots of openness. It was amazing. I mean, I jumped out of bed wanting to contribute, feeling great. And the reality was, I said I went to a different team. A different team was created because one person changed on the team. The leader changed. And I realized it didn't matter how good of an engineer I was or any of my colleagues if we had a leader who wasn't helping bring out the best in us, getting clarity and helping us communicate, like on team 2. Team 1 was really not fun. I was depressed. I didn't really enjoy coming to work at all. Team 2, I loved contributing and I would do whatever I needed to do. So that influenced me through the Air Force and through corporate America. And in 2002, our leader at the time at a division of Motorola dropped us from 3,000 people to 20 in 18 months. 2-0. There were technological challenges and the market was hard, but it was really a leadership failure. And as I got out, I thought, okay, great. I have a severance. This is a gift. And what do I want to do with this? How do I want to take these learnings that I've done and help other people learn them, not as a guru sitting on the hill, but as a partner beside people, helping them discover what they need and perhaps giving a tool here or some advice there or a bolster here so that they can be their most excellent self as a leader and enable that in others.
It's so fascinating how the tone and the spirit of the leader makes such a difference everywhere you go. It really is that everybody is looking up to that leader for cues on how they should be, what the tone is of an organization, and how people are going to operate. Can you tell us what, in your opinion, are the traits of a great leader?
Well, I think great leaders really, do enable in a positive way the best within others. Right now, our team has set a goal for the next year. We set one as an intention and figure out what are we going to do besides the work that we do. How are we going to continue evolving our company and each other? And our goal is thriving in our sweet spots. So that means as a company, as individuals, where are the places, not that we get to live out there all the time, do only the fun things, but how can we tap our strengths? And so I think really great leaders they understand their own strengths, first of all. So if I understand my strengths, I will see your differences as your strengths, not as I'm normal. And if you're like me, you're normal. And if you're not, you're abnormal. A lot of people don't really realize their strengths. So knowing those strengths, being able to understand what my path might be, not as a rigid step, but where am I going and how might I invite you along with it for as long as we get to go together? And then I think it's a lot around how do I develop trust and really give trust first as a leader? It's not, well, I'll wait till somebody is trustworthy. How do I become vulnerable and open to what we need to do together? I'm learning just as much, maybe even more than the people that I'm, quote, I have air quotes here, leading. When I have that deep connection with them, I believe that I will equip you and uniquely for the thing, rather than treating you as a cog. Here's the role. This is what this person does. Like, how can you make that role sing? How do we equip that? And we get the best for everyone. And then finally, the last part. So I know myself, I'm really working well with others and enabling the best. And then we all turn towards the organization. And that's where we say, well, what's effective? What's the right things to do? And then eventually we figure out how can we do those really right? So efficiency. So I think the pieces that make a good leader, a lot of companies kind of come the other way. They start with, let's be efficient. Oh, that didn't work. Let's reorganize. We need to be different and effective. Oh, that didn't work. I didn't give you the tools that you needed. Oh, that didn't work because I didn't treat you as anything more than just a blob, human resource. And if those things aren't happening, then it comes into me. Am I in the right actions around the things that are challenging, difficult, and important? And then if I'm not there, do I know myself? So I think I've told you the path one way through, and the path a lot of organizations sort of show up with.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Back when I was an MBA student, one of my favorite classes of all time was organizational behavior.
Oh, it's so weird.
It was brilliant because it was a social experiment. The class divided into two different teams, and there were two different classes, and so there were 4 teams total.
Wow.
And we had to create an organization, come up with a product or service, and sell it. And at the end, it was, whoever made the most sales, whoever was the most functional organization, and a lot of the tenets that we had learned in the class, we had to put into actual real-term practice. And so it was fascinating because you definitely saw the dysfunction in certain groups and at certain times of stress and moments. You saw the rise of what we would consider either natural born leaders or the ones that rose to the challenge of wanting to actually take that front, and then others that really great followers. And it was just interesting to see how quickly all of that had to build, because by the end of the semester, you were going to get graded on it. And so I often think, this predated a lot of virtual TV like Survivor and whatnot. And
you were living it. You were just watching it.
We were living it. We were absolutely living it. But I was just curious from your standpoint, because I used the term natural born leaders. And I think about some people would say, yeah, that there is this inherent gift that some people have. Maybe it's the firstborn child. Or do you think that there are any specific traits in humans that make them better leaders just inherently? Or is it a skill that can be learned?
Yes. So that's the short answer, is both are true. In fact, the most inherent trait for a really great leader is something that I don't think many people, when they think of great leadership, would put together. But I was challenged one time because in my book, I wrote down, everybody's a leader. I think of my 5-year-old son bouncing across the couch cushions. My 2-year-old daughter was following him, doing exactly what he was doing. We imitate, we look at things, that's the way that we as humans kind of learn and work together. And this person's like, I don't think that. And it said, could anyone be a great leader? Really good question. I think that the most important thing for a good leader, anybody can be a good leader. Anybody can walk through the techniques and, follow the self-discovery and learn all this stuff. But really, if you don't like people and you're not willing to sort of do hard things in the service of something bigger, you're probably not going to be a great leader. You'll be okay leader. You'll do all right. I think that's what the core of leadership is. I'm not doing this for me to sit on a big golden throne and take, hors d'oeuvres. It's more of, I am in service to something bigger and I'm inviting you to do the same. And I'm with that, there's all sorts of things I'm going to do in it and I have to like people in some way and care about them. People are peoply. They are tough. Had a client was like, if my people were just so peoply, everything would be easy. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And that's the way that we're getting it done, right? People. The thing that fascinates me in the organizational behavior stuff that I've done some things here and there in terms of taking some classes is that everybody is completely unique. I mean, I get to see so many people and everybody's unique. And at the same time, there seem to be a limited number of patterns that we fall into when we're in groups. I think there's a book on my shelf that says the 9 major plots and everything's just a subplot of that for screenwriters or somebody's writing. It's kind of that way with groups of people. As you said, there's certain things that emerge and people that step up or step down, or somebody's like, I'm going to lead through an intellectual superiority or whatever. Those things just sort of happen and people interact around them. And those patterns aren't infinite. They're a small number. I never judge people on that. I never go, oh, that's the pattern. I say, looks like this might be coming up. What sort of things might be helpful here? How do we help everybody be their best self when it might be clearly apparent people aren't?
Now, as far as the clients that come to Trebuchet, is it usually actually the leader of the organization that says, I need help? Or is it human resources? Or is it, somebody else within the organization that says, we need help?
You've been through this, Jennifer. I can tell. Okay. So I would tell you the most effective place is when the leader or the couple of senior leaders come together and said, you know what, we think this team has more capacity and our organization has more capacity than we are exercising. And we want to be part of whatever we're going to do. The ones where HR comes and says, oh my God, we're struggling, everything's trying to do, we're having a hard time. And frequently the leaders have a shadow, a blind spot that's kind of affecting the organization, and people don't have the authority to say, hey, you have a blind spot. Not that we walk in and say, hey, we have blind spots. We actually, rather than talk about what's wrong, we like to say, what are we doing great? What could be better? What's getting in the way? Let's go. And so we have a very positive perspective to support leaders' egos and people's egos that says, we're not bad. We're doing the best we can, even if it doesn't get us what we want. And it's so exciting when we have a team of people that discover what change in behavior, how they're going to work together, the clarity that they needed. Everybody's the same in the room, and we now can get to where we need to go. And that's really fun. So it does require, we've had some people that come up and say, you got to go fix somebody. We got to go fix this boss. We have to fix this person. And I say, as a recovering mechanical engineer, I could fix things. I don't think people should be or could be fixed. Now, if we create conditions where they want to shift their behavior and that supports where we're wanting to go, I think that we could have a better situation.
Now, when you start working with an organization, a client, is there a specific playbook that you use to get to know what the situation is and then how you're going to address and be able to work with them ongoing on whatever it is that they wish to achieve?
Yeah, there's a lot of different doors that people come to us in different situations. Yeah, I said limited in some ways in the patterns, but the situations are always completely, the same company and has two different things going on, or two different companies have the same thing going on. So there's a couple different doors we go through. One of them is the model where we're not getting the results we quite want. Maybe there's friction on the team that's, heating up or causing problems. Maybe they've lost some good people. And then so they say, so we would ask questions of the person approaching us. Let's say it's HR. They say, hey, we don't know. We're trying to figure out if we could be better. All right, let's talk about what good would look like and where you are. Let's then go talk with the leaders and see what they think is possible. And then that would be the cue. Usually it involves the senior leadership team, because if the senior leader and senior leadership team don't shift, the organization can't move. It can't change. You could train everybody on something and it would just go back to the way it was, because that's the reinforcing behavior. So it's really good when those folks show up. Sometimes they'll look at themselves and say, I can tell that I'm not, I'm in a place I've never been before, like, I don't know, a pandemic, hybrid work where I don't get to see people, or people that have been hired that I never even physically met. That's really challenging for an organization that didn't start remote. And, how the heck do I lead in this? So sometimes it's those kind of things. So we're exploring, in that case, what does the organization need first? And what does the leader deeply want to connect with that and grow themselves? Because if they're growing, then the organization can move towards that space versus, we don't do the go fix them or go do that to them. Recent post by Seth Godin said, there's people who do things for people, to people, and with people. And I think that's a leadership thing. I do things for, I serve. Overdone, that becomes like you're dependent on me. If I do things to you, I think that's a position of like, I'm better. And frankly, I really don't like that at all. And so we are never in that space. We follow a lot of clients that deal with consultants who have done the things to them. I believe it's doing things with people. And so if it was the team, we might talk with the team and say, hey, what's going well? What's not going well yet? What's missing or unclear? And then we bring those results back anonymously and say, here's where the team kind of is. What would that mean? Would it benefit to have clarity around what's our deep purpose and what are the ways we live it out, otherwise known as values, and what's going on that we need to do better? And then what does that mean right now for me? So there's sort of this cascade of from the high level of our connection all the way down to how am I doing? Or it might be one of the things we do is called goal-focused team building, where we help people experience, without trust falls and squishy toys, are helping people experience what it's like to be vulnerable with each other, to really get to know each other in a short amount of time, in service of the business, not, again, touchy-feely. I work with a lot of male engineers and they would just run from the room, right? Touchy-feely. But if you're like, well, if I know your strengths and you know my strengths, we probably could get better together. They're like, okay. We have more healthy conflict. Our commitment is deeper than to the goals that we decide on. And we can hold each other accountable. We don't have to wait for the boss, so that the results we get are collective first. So I just threw a whole bunch of stuff off our indivisible tool belt at you, Jennifer, but we really try to meet people where they are and walk through a shared discovery of where we could be and what could be getting in the way.
Fascinating. I worked for a number of larger companies earlier in my day, and I remember one specifically, and these were, large Fortune 500 companies, very successful. One of the companies, the human resource manager would typically say, every organization gets the results that they are set up to get.
Yes.
And I thought that that was a fascinating insight. It was also intriguing that in a number of these large organizations that were just killing it in terms of financials, very profitable year over year growth, all of that, the people, whenever we would do these, reviews and, the self-assessments, terrible morale, terrible work-life balance, felt that they needed to practically murder themselves in order to get everything done on time and to the rigor that they wanted, because they felt that that was their measurement, their ruler of success.
Yes.
Is, how much am I bringing in for the organization and at what cost? I think that because we've all been through the past few years there's been a shift in a lot of that. And we're now talking more about work-life balance. We're talking about mental wellness. We're talking about well-being from a holistic perspective. We're getting more into the things that I think that the men that you're used to working with would typically run from the hills. We're starting to get more into the touchy-feely. I wanted to just ask you, what are some of the changes that you've seen happen, and that leaders that of maybe past kind of leadership style or mindset that worked very well for an extended period of time might be like, oh, things are changing. I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. How do you walk somebody through a whole shift that happens with millennials and Gen Zers coming into the workforce?
Oh, that's just such a simple question, Jennifer. It's just so easy.
How much time do we have?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. How much time do we have? Yeah, I'm trying to think of the places to go. So you asked about how to help somebody through this and sort of the shifts that are happening. And then in a way you hinted at let's see, what have I heard it called? Domestication, I think, is Don Miguel Ruiz tells us we get domesticated, we get trained to be a certain way. And so a lot of times, I will tell you as a sideline, when we have people that come to work with us, like directly, like it's part of our team, usually it takes about the first almost a year and a half, till we can help them unlearn those self-protective behaviors and holding the shiny cutout in front of us and just saying, I'm fine, everything's okay. So it really, I think I feel honored and privileged to be able to lead that by saying, today's been kind of hard and I'm struggling with this and I'm tearing up about something that matters a lot. There's touchy-feely that's artificial, and there's real genuine presence and connection where we're human with each other, which can look emotional. It can be that way. So Google did the Aristotle Project. I don't know if you've heard about that. That was where they measured hundreds of teams and found out what was the thing that made the biggest difference in the team's performance. And head and shoulders above all of them was emotional safety. So psychological safety. I could be me. I could say, this is a hard day, or I'm struggling because my dog is dying, or, anything could be happening. So you can hear that connecting with what you just asked is like, well, how do you have these people that are showing up like, work needs to be my community. Work needs to be, especially in the pandemic, I think a lot of people were collapsed down to who were they interacting with most, even if it was online. I need a counselor. I want somebody who can coach me, not only in what I'm doing here at work, but how that fits into the rest of my life. And I think there's a lot of people who never signed up for that, right? They barely know what they're doing in terms of, I just go to work, I do my work, right? Those people are, I think, moving on out of the, because that was sort of generational. And I think there's an opportunity for leaders to say, can I be in touch with what's important to me safely, not spraying it on people, but safely in a way that allows that for other people. And what's really cool, Jennifer, is that the leaders who do that, the men and women who do that, they get to a place where they're enjoying their experience significantly better. They're like, I'm sleeping better and I'm having this good stuff. I don't usually go directly to let's do counseling. First of all, I'm not a counselor. I mean, we do a lot of work, recovering engineer, done this for 20 years, but we talk about what's great in the business and what excites you about that. So there's a connection there, but it's kind of like the business reason for doing it. And once we do that, then people start saying, oh, you know what? The business got better when I was more in touch with what I could do. And I can honestly say, hey, Jennifer, that's a better idea than mine. Or I screwed up. Or Jennifer, I need your help. I can't do this. Then we're a team. Then we're able to be more than the just strong pillars that normally teams are. So I think it's an opportunity for people who have had different leadership styles to sort of step back and decide, what do they want to have happening in the world and how do they want to step into that? And having support to do that is really important, because if it's just me, I'll do what I do. And if it's different, it's hard. And I probably will slide back to the way I do it.
Okay.
I don't know how much it answered that really tough question there.
Yeah, no, you did a great job with that.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, for all of those leaders of organizations or leaders of households that might be listening, we talked about being able to to be vulnerable. We talked about working with, not to, and in some cases for, but in a balanced way. What are some of the other things that people can say, ooh, let me stop and think about, what my behavior is or what I'm projecting? What are some of the things that you've noticed really help in perhaps the shortest or the least amount of time?
Another killer question to sum up all this experience
That's
into
why I'm doing
a amount of time. You are awesome at it. I'm really impressed. Your listeners must just be like, okay, what's the next question she's gonna ask? This is gonna be great. So how do I get in touch? I think I would say the most important thing is to be curious and listen. I think those are the two, if I boiled it all down to curiosity, and not in the, I'm curious why the hell you're not doing this. That's not curiosity. People will say that. Not curiosity. Like real, genuine, honest curiosity and listening. And I think when that connection, you can find people want to be heard and people want to be able to be understood and have their ideas considered. They don't have to have the way that things go. It doesn't have to be their way. But if they're not any of those above, like I'm not listened to, I'm not appreciated in any way, I'm going to either show up and just kind of idle, like quiet quitting, or I'm going to maybe fight back, which those people are actually easier to redirect than somebody who just disengages because they care. That's why they're fighting back, right? So what do we fight for together? And one example I can give, and I haven't had the privilege to listen to a lot of your other episodes. I'm sure you have some really cool role models. Have you heard of Iko Bethia?
No.
So Iko Bethia is an amazing coach and I'm trying to think, diversity consultant. I'm not sure. She was on a Brene Brown podcast and she talked about this. So at the core of this way to deal with the really tough issues of like, I feel oppressed or I'm doing things that people are feeling oppressing or we're not honoring each other, microaggressions, all the things that can happen, most of which are unintentional, at least on the conscious level. I'm not intending to hurt anybody. Rather than calling people out, she went through this practice of calling people in and there's curiosity and listening in it. So the way it starts is if, let's say you said something and it kind of hit me and I was like, whoa, gosh, but you're the boss, Jennifer. And I just have to suck it up. Or I'm like, do I fight back? Am I frozen? Like, what the hell? And if I can stay in curiosity, that keeps me out of judgment because you can't be curious and judgmental at the same time. That's really important, a good thing. And so if I'm curious and I say, Jennifer, what were you hoping would be a result of you sharing that information? Or asking me, how can we get a real facilitator here? Or, whatever the comment would be if you were the leader. And I've done this like literally with people sitting around me in the room and just done that and said, and I'm really truly curious. This is not a technique. And then I listen and you say, well, I'm trying to make sure, I think we're doing good things and whatever, and I'll probably feel the sting lessen if I understand your intent. And then I can say, okay, thank you, Jennifer, that helps me. How open would you be to hearing how it impacted me initially? And then I would say, I felt like, what am I doing here? And I must not be a real facilitator. And then I thought, I'm in the wrong place. And if that wasn't your intention, you'd say, holy cow, wow, I didn't know that would happen. And then we can both say, well, what do we want to do going forward? And that curiosity and listening and the connection, I can't tell you how powerful that is for anybody in any circumstance. I think it's one of the most powerful tools I've ever had in helping align people together. And what are we trying to do? And if you indeed were like, well, I think you're a shitty facilitator. You're not very good and you need to go. And we need somebody who can really do this. Thank you for letting me know that. How can we set up I'd like the team to be okay. I would literally do this in the middle of our room. Because I think to me, as a leader, being vulnerable is very, very important. And there is times, you may have seen this, when as a facilitator, I'm not the leader, and yet I can set the example. If I am vulnerable in front of other people in a way that supports what we need to do, they essentially just got a little way to say, oh, I might be able to do that too. And very often it's the CEO really needs that example or could benefit from that because, oh, you don't have to be perfect. Oh, you don't have to have every answer. Oh, you could look to the group for help because that's what I'm doing facilitatively. And those are very effective ways to connect and lead people.
That is so fascinating. Yes, the listening and making sure that you understand what was just said and understand what was just heard. The understanding underneath the listening is so key because then you can really get to the humanness of what's going on in an ordinary situation, which would otherwise be, okay, I'm going to put the veneer on and be like, oh, thank you. I respect that. And if you don't build those connections, you don't get curious enough to really dig into the meat and the heart of what those issues are.
And if we're asking people to commit a piece of their lives for this, and hopefully in purpose-based organizations, they're there to commit a piece of their life for this. If I'm as a leader helping enable that, why would I go anywhere else? It's not a golden handcuffs. It's an environment where we are being the best with each other. And guess what? When things matter a lot, I'm going to be emotional. It's going to be harder. I'm going to be more stressed. stressed. You're going to be more stressed. So having ways that we can work through that and use that stress to push us forward rather than beating up on each other, or one person pulling back always and the other person like, yeah, it always works for me. I wonder what's happening for you, until that person says, no, I refuse. I'm not going to accommodate anymore. I'm now participating in my own diminishment. I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's usually not fun when that happens. I mean, it's important, but rather, how do we do that almost all the time? Like, hey, what are we doing together? Hey, what are we doing together?
I'm going to switch gears
Go
because I
ahead.
know that we were talking, you mentioned just earlier about purpose-driven organizations.
Mm,
And I would say that purpose-driven organizations, from the soul of the person who founded the company, as well as the leader, the CEO, they know that they have a higher calling. They know that they are out there for not just profits, but also for people and the planet in most cases.
mhm.
And so, from the perspective of having an ear to the ground or understanding the heartbeat of their organization, I would imagine that that comes a little bit more natural. And you yourself are the founder of a purpose driven organization in that you are a certified B Corp.
Yep.
Can you tell us, what do you think sets people apart or sets organizations apart that are purpose driven versus others that might not be? And why you yourself decided that you wanted to be a purpose driven organization?
It's really fun. I'm going to play with just for a moment here, because I had somebody talking about conscious leadership and purpose driven businesses. And I said, if you're trying to invite people in, sort of hinting that they're unconscious and not purpose driven is probably not a way to help them feel like, I think I'm a conscious leader because I'm awake. And even Enron was a purpose driven organization, not in the way that we're talking about. I mean, they had a very clear purpose of what they wanted to do together, and it was incredibly destructive. That's it. I know we're talking about positive purpose. We're talking about things that enhance people and planet and really thriving in an economic way. I think you hinted at the answer when you said this company was started from the soul of someone. I think it's a deep connection to meaning, and I think we're all wired for purpose. I think a lot of times we get that domestication that says, no, you're actually here to consume. That's your purpose. Or you're here to just grow like a cancer. That's your purpose. But ultimately, I think when we can strip away some of that conditioning, I think everybody really wants that. So the people that are more in touch with that, of like, why am I here and what's the sort of change that I would like to make in the world versus I just need to get through the days and make it my weekend. Those are the folks that I think have the opportunity to say, here's a purpose I'm about, bigger than me. Would you like to join? How would you like to help? And so it's a different kind of coming together than I need a job. And of course we do. And people need housing, and, the economy works. You have to have money. So people are going to do that. And yet, how can we invite people into something bigger? I think those people that would like to see that for themselves and for others are the ones that usually do that. And that's certainly me. I definitely, there can be more of a good thing, too much of a good thing. So caring for people and trying to help them, if it goes too far, that's rescuing. I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to do things for you, even if you could do them yourselves. I've had experience with that. I'm a recovering rescuer as well, family systems and things. And I was looking for the best within myself and others. And when I started finding that, giving myself permission to be who I was like, in fact, when I got out of that thing, I said, I've been doing the same work inside these very large organizations like you described. And it did do some really great things. And I think I helped a lot of people. And I was always limited by the power structure. Or if it's like, well, yeah, he works for us, he would say that. Or, gee, maybe we don't want to have him working here anymore. And that fear, I could feel that kind of creeping in on me. Do I say that? Do I ask the challenging question because I think it could be better for everybody? Or do I stay quiet? And I decided in my own company that I could do that. And if it turned out we were working together and the questions I was asking where you wanted to go, then we would just part, and it's okay. I'm not here to impose anything on you. We're working together as partners. We kind of bolt on for however long we'd like, and then we separate. And maybe we come back together for another engagement. So that really informed that sort of partnership and bringing out the best in you and me was why I built a company, because I didn't see a lot of companies that did that. It was like, that's not the normal way. And yet I see it as so powerful, and I wouldn't want to live any other way.
And so why would you want to live up to the rigor of being B Corp certified? I'm curious.
That's awesome. And I love it, and I see these announcements and they like, hooray, we got B Corp certification. So I'm going to sound like I'm patting ourselves in the back because this B Corp thing, that sounds really cool. I looked into it, said, yeah, we should apply. I think it took us 6 months because we were doing all this stuff already. It actually pushed me over the edge to, this was one thing that did make a difference. They were like, yeah, you need to really be thinking about how you're helping people medically. And I was like, we are not giving out we are not providing benefits so people can be focused on the work and not on their health. Not that they wouldn't, if it was ill health, right?
Mhm.
Like they were really worried about that and that was hurting them. Rather, how do we help them keep healthy? What benefits do we need to provide? Because that's just what we should be doing. And so I think we changed to a credit union versus a bank. We upped the way we did our medical work. And we had to put the statements about we were anti-slavery and things like that. And so the rigor, I'm hearing rigor, it wasn't much rigor because we were doing virtually all those things anyway, because I believed it was the right thing to do.
Mm.
And so it was wonderful to have something that helped us take it up a notch and then also sort of put us in touch with a community of people that we were doing that, even if it was maybe a farther leap than we had to initially.
Amazing. Now, you also wrote a book called Ripple, a field manual for leadership that works. Can you tell us what that's about?
Sure. It's pretty exciting, although it's kind of amazing. I thought it would take 6 months because I had all these articles and things I'd written in blog posts. And I'm like, I'll just bring this together and it'll just be great. And it took 6 years. So I got the 6 right. I started writing it because I saw people applying really cool. I mean, I've got so many leadership books, it's just crazy, like 20 linear feet of them, probably, maybe more. And they'd apply a technique from this book or this strategy or things like that. They weren't in synchronicity. They were fighting each other because they had different philosophies behind them. Mm. And so I said, I think I'd like to put something in. It doesn't have to be the book, but a book where people can see how, and I described it actually. The first part is about the leader knowing themselves and how they show up and know their path. That's Ripple 1. Ripple 2 is how am I trusting and enabling and equipping other people? That's Ripple 2. So that's interaction. And Ripple 3 is the organization itself. How do we, get clear on where we're going and make sure that things work right and produce things efficiently? So that's the book. And I had all these little pieces that I had learned from other people, a few I've developed myself, and I put them in the book. And I just wanted to give people something that was, I had a guy one time, he told me, he said, I was reading the book and it felt like we were sitting across the kitchen table having a conversation. And you're asking some questions, and then you offered a couple things I could try out to see what I could do better. And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be a with book before I read this post. And I wanted it to be something that people could feel like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And by working in those areas where they might have some opportunity to be stronger as a leader, they could actually make their whole organization better. So actually in the back of the book, it's really fun. It says, yeah, this is nice, but I need help now. And so because it's organized in all these pieces and there's little, like, here's a principle, like look for diamonds in the dirt. That's a leader. I can see excellence in somebody they can't see themselves because it's normal to them. If I don't call it out, they don't know it and we can't use it. So, and here's ways to think about the people and, whatever. Anyway, so it's a little tiny 5-minute exercise around this one principle. And those are the kind of things I have in there. But at the end of the book, it says, hey, my people are not really making the impact they want. We're not making the results. And I find a lot of backtracking. You might want to look at diamonds in the dirt for yourself and your team. And then it refers you back to that section. So it's sort of like a self-help diagnostic to figure out where could I be better. And so, yeah, I think we're almost out of the initial printing and we do like online stuff, but it's pretty cool to have people come and say, we're using this for our master's degree program, Effective Business Leaders. And that's our curriculum. And we're just going through that and working all these exercises ourselves.
Wow.
Super exciting.
Yeah, that's always wonderful to know that it's easy to catch on. It's mission accomplished for you as far as conversation across the kitchen table. And it's something that people can actually put into practical use. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I did have 3 of our clients got together. They conspired and they called me and said, okay, this is nice and everything. We need a cohort-based leadership program that runs for like 6 to 9 months. And we want to send all our people. And I'm like, well, it's a do-it-yourself book. You don't, of course we do coaching. And they said, well, how about if we pre-fund it? How many slots can we buy ahead of time? And then you can take that money, work with a curriculum designer and make it happen. That was 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. So we're in our 3rd cohort, the Ripple Leadership Program, where we do this with some coaching and things, and mostly purpose-driven businesses. Lovely. Virtually all, they're B Corps and small giants, also a great game of business players, these folks that are really trying to build leaders from the ground up. And it's a blast.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. So then, aside from your cohort, how can people get in touch with you? How can people learn more about Trebuchet and working with your organization?
Yes. Well, TrebuchetGroup.com is probably the best place. We've got some really fun videos of clients and things on that site. It has a link to the Ripple Leadership Program. It has a link to some of our other things. And basically it says, hey, let's have a conversation because there's no one size fits all. It's about the conversation of discovery. We could see, I don't know, what could we do? What's great look like and how might we partner? So that would be really wonderful. And there's lots of tools and things on there people can just take and use and try to be better. And I really encourage the B Corp community to check it out, and whatever things they'd like or questions they want to ask. We even have a 20-minute, no obligation whatsoever. Just ask a question and we'll just work through whatever we can do to discover things together. And hopefully that helps people.
That sounds amazing. Chris Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining me today on Role Models.
I really appreciate it. I'm sort of embarrassed to think of myself as a role model. And I love that you're highlighting people that can help other people make a difference in their lives.
It's all about being an inspiration and spreading inspiration so that people can be better at everything that they do. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.